Hi, I'm Mark Lynn. I'm the head of executive advisory and strategy at Netsync. I've been doing this for 25 plus years, focusing largely on AI and cybersecurity. I'm a four-time CIO and CISO, and I'm really looking forward to spending time and talking both with Nick and Mark. Nick Biasini has spent more than 2 decades in information security. Today, he serves as the head of outreach for Cisco Talos, where he has a team of threat researchers focused on identifying and exposing emerging cyber threats from both nation-state actors and criminal organizations. Nick began his career defending the national aerospace and has held a range of technical roles across both public and private sectors. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks for having me.
And next is Mark Jabian. He's a cybersecurity practice manager here at Netsync with more than 20 years of experience in cybersecurity, network architecture, data center, virtualization, and storage. He specializes in designing and integrating complex technology environments across multiple platforms and implementing secure, high-performance infrastructures. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
Let's jump right into the questions. First one is, when you're talking to CISOs today, what is their number one concern? Why don't you take that one, Nick?
So today, everything is largely focused around AI. A couple of different facets to that, though. Number one, making sure that they're securing their infrastructure, securing the usage, and promoting as much usage as they can. And then secondly, trying to limit the amount of data that's being exposed, preventing it from leaking out and being absorbed by either somewhere out on the internet or ending up in some of these models that could be used later.
Gotcha. Is there something that you think, because it's a multifaceted problem, because there's so many issues with it, is there something you think that people can do to take care of that early?
So one of the most important things, obviously securing the infrastructure is important, but education is incredibly important. Talking to your users, what is expected, what's not expected, what can you do, what can't you do, what are the policies associated with this, and what are the consequences for violating? I know, at least in my organization, we're already seeing that being integrated into our security programs and into the communications that are going out widely to employees.
Yeah, those are great. Mark, what's your take?
When I took to CISO, most of their concern is the rapid change of threat landscape in our industry. And one of those biggest one is AI. Everyone is using AI, and with that comes with risk. And the risk comes in with controls. How do you control the users that you're not leaking information that should not be leaked into the dark web or to the internet? Also with security, with people that hosting their own AI, and that's one also facet that you have to look at, and that's for the customers that want to go move into AI ready environment. We need to address multiple areas, including Nick mentioned about infrastructure, education for the users, and guardrails and control.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about guardrails and controls, but the other thing is the bad actors now are using automated through AI determining vulnerabilities and then comparing those to CVEs. Now they know exactly what specific port versus doing a broad port scan. They can do very specific, right? It's almost like a surgeon type of approach. I've been hearing a lot about those. So obviously there's a lot to this, and having the right tools, the right defense to protect your infrastructure is becoming even more important. So the second one is, and it kind of leads into that, is how much is shadow AI lurking in most enterprise networks?
It's everywhere. And it's kind of a multifaceted problem. You know, you have organizations are trying to make sure that users, while they're at the office, aren't doing things that they shouldn't be doing or processing data in ways that they shouldn't. But one of the biggest challenges is this landscape is moving incredibly, incredibly fast, and users want to be on the cutting edge. So a lot of times at their house at night, they're building personal assistants, they're playing with agents, they're trying to figure out the latest and greatest, and that introduces a huge amount of risk. It's easy to load your email messages and load your chat logs into these types of cutting edge technologies that are out there, but the risks can be enormous to organizations.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think most organizations have no clue how much risk associated with shadow AI they actually have.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mark, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, same thing here. When you look at the users, everybody want to improve their efficiency. And with that, users trying to look at like how can they improve the efficiency. And with that, there's a lot of people using AI, mostly actually using AI. Before it's generative AI, which is the beginning of AI. And then you have agentic AI. And with agentic AI, that's where all the problem is, because users now can have their own assistants, multiple agents running as their assistants, and be able to run jobs in their behalf. And with that, security is the big risk, because now, for example, If the users want to do some connect into Amazon, for example, you have the API key accessing those information and also accessing into the environment, like the user for internal access. When you look at it, the biggest problem is the identity of the user. When the user access the internal resources, it's very fast. Like human resources take a while to click those. But with AI, with agentic AI, it's very fast. It's binary, very fast. And if you don't have a proper controls with that, it could lead into a biggest risk. Because if that agentic AI is compromised, then that creates a lot of issues.
Yeah, I think one of the ones that I know is going through the Chicago courts right now, which relates directly to that, is the idea of contracts being signed autonomously by agents or by digital properties or assets versus an actual human, and what impact that may have on that. So there's definitely some things associated with that. They take kind of the far end of AI. I guess we thought agentic AI was far, and now it seems right here upon us. And it's like right here.
Yes, it's moving very, very fast. And at the end, that's really what it is. Agentic AI is going to effectively be a new user. So starting to think about that from an organizational perspective, how do you limit access? If you give an AI agent access to everything, they are going to access everything. It's very different than how a user goes about accessing data. And it definitely introduces a ton of new challenges.
I'm so glad you said that, because that kind of heads me into my next question. We talk about agents are going to be a new user. How's that going to impact the CISO's identity and CIO's identity practice?
That is really one of the biggest questions that we have. And that's what we're hearing a lot from CISOs is, how do I start building my access control for agents that are going to be coming in the near term? So you have to look at it like a user, model your access like you do your users. Again, the biggest challenge is if you give it extra access, it will use it. Agents are going to test the limits of what they're able to do. And if you don't have good traceability and you don't have good access control, it's going to leave you in a place where you aren't really sure what it did and you're not really sure what it accessed. And bad things can definitely come from that.
Yeah, I think, Mark, the idea of just MFA alone is not going to be enough going into agentic AI. The identity and the identity stack is going to look a lot different, and how it's going to impact the organization.
When you look at the security perspective with agentic AI, when you look at the user, you have username and password and MFA. Agentic AI is a bit different when you look at the security, because now you have to make sure that this user using a foolproof, that it cannot be compromised. It improves like identity and access management. You need to make sure that you have using a good PKI into a security, so you will not gonna be tampered. And the second one is also authorization. How can you authorize that user? Because I've seen one used last December that the one of the company get compromised, and the user get the agent using that and elevate the user and be able to compromise the whole environment. And that's the biggest risk. It is the biggest risk in the current threat industry, because without putting a right controls to address this agentic AI, you have to address it not the same way as you address the normal employee.
Yeah, it almost sounds like agent to agent communication is going to rely heavily on having the right privileged access and the right instructions and guardrails around that.
Yes.
Right. So that kind of leads me into my next question. So what type of guardrails do Cisco and Netsync have for our customers?
So the primary things that we're doing around AI, AI defense is kind of the linchpin to most of this. This is where our real defense of AI comes in, where you can start protecting things like prompt injection. You can start getting a better handle on what AI is being used, and hopefully try and make and get a handle on the shadow AI problem that we've been talking a lot about today. AI defense is really where all of that lies, and where the keys are to kind of taking that first step in protecting and protecting your data and your users from unauthorized access.
Mark, do you have a take on that?
Cisco offers two solutions for that. One is AI access, which comes with a secure access product, and then the other one is AI defense. Security AI access provide controls with end users accessing different AI in the cloud. So it provides security with safety, security, and privacy. So looking into those controls, either injection, prevent the user from having this data controlled going outbound, AI defense is more on into if you're hosting your LLMs, your models, and providing security controls around those people accessing it, be able to make sure that it's not having those prompt injections, any vulnerabilities, and also looking into the code itself, the model itself that's not vulnerable. So continuous checking to the platform, making sure that everything is running as supposed to be.
Yeah, Nick, in your kind of in your role, I know you're more on the threat side,
Mhm.
but do you kind of see the guardrails inevitably playing into like XDR and some of the other Cisco pieces and actually kicking off playbooks when things happen according to what the threats that you guys have passed on?
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of this comes back to traceability, right? You need to understand what your agents are doing. If you do not understand what they're doing, it's going to be very hard to troubleshoot if something goes sideways. And that, unfortunately, is something that does happen. So it is one of the most important things, especially from a security perspective. If you can trace back what the agent did, you can find out when was the malicious activity introduced? When did it start doing things it wasn't supposed to do? And how can I make sure that that doesn't happen again?
Yeah, I guess, it kind of goes back to what we've all been talking about for years and years, early detection,
Hmm.
right? Really get that early detection going. With that, you can have some possibilities. Without that, you're in a lot of trouble. We're back to that day zero type of activity where you don't where your 0 days where you really have a limited way to defeat it or stop it
Yeah.
or contain it.
As an organization, what you're trying to do with agents is make it so a compromised agent is no different than a compromised user. You don't want extra data exposure, extra loss associated with it. So your real goal should be trying to make that be as level a playing field as you can.
That's a really good way to think about it. That's a great analogy for it. I think a lot of people
And
will
and
get that.
platformization works with that one because with Cisco, you have that product that monitors all the way. Like you mentioned, the integration portion with the XDR, with the Splunk, and an ADR, be able to see that there's a compromise, be able to do an automation workflow that address that right away instead of waiting for a different product that will not communicate to one another.
For most CISOs, you know, how does Cisco Netsync provide value to help a next step of not only shadow AI discovery, but what to do after you've discovered it?
That's a very good question because when with us, with Cisco and Netsync, we offer multiple services. We're doing for what we're doing right now is doing workshop. We're doing AI readiness assessment for our customers. We're doing workshop on resiliency, cyber resiliency to our customer, where we look at the whole holistic of their environment and trying to figure out which one of those that has vulnerabilities and holes that we can look at and then provide solutions to our customers.
So what guardrails do you guys provide or do you help them with their guardrails?
It addressed multiple attack vectors, and one of those attack vectors is doing the AI portion, right? The AI, we're looking into the guardrails. How can we help our customer secure their data going out, and also secure if they're hosting their LLM, also looking into that and what we can help provide them with solution to address those issues.
So we've been talking a lot about security today and securing AI. So how does MCP play into this? And what are your thoughts?
So MCP, in case people don't know, is Model Context Protocol. It basically allows applications to integrate with LLMs, or various AI technologies. So it allows your AI bot or your agent to start using whatever application, and it understands and kind of sets the framework for how to communicate. Because of that, it is incredibly powerful and also introduces a lot of risk. It's where organizations need to be paying extra attention on how are you integrating with external applications, where these external applications reside, and are they things that you control inside of your organization or external resources that will greatly change the way that you do this. Again, another area that is moving at an incredible pace, so it is very difficult to keep up. New MCP capabilities are being rolled into applications at an alarming rate at this point.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time, isn't it?
Mm.
I mean, so the technologies seem to change just like every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, then there's news every day. Mark, what's your thoughts on MCP?
I think one of the biggest problem with MCP is that people can just create MCP and connect to different MCPs. So you could create MCP to MCP communication or just MCP to LLMs. And without that securing that, because that was the biggest deal addressed with the data loss prevention. because MCP communicates to different areas outside your environment. And if without securing that properly, without proper controls and guardrails within that MCP environment, then you're going to be vulnerable.
Sounds like we're going to relive the API vulnerabilities nightmare again.
Yes.
Sounds very similar. Yeah, that's very interesting.